All right, so welcome to the deep dive. And today we're going to get into website design, specifically how to level up your WordPress site, make it stand out. And we're going to be talking about Google Web Fonts.
Fonts. It's more important than you think.
Yeah, we found this great article by Now Technology Systems, this Australian web design company. It's aimed at small business owners. And, whether you are a coder or not, I think there's some really good stuff in here for anyone who wants to make their website look more professional, right?
Totally, yeah. It's about the visual appeal. When someone lands on your page, do they think, this is pretty good? It builds trust, don't you think?
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's talk about Google Web Fonts and why they're important, right? This article really stresses the importance of looks and branding. And, first impressions online, they're huge. What do you think?
It's like walking into a store, right? You walk in and you're like, oh, this is nice. And, you walk in and it's like, whoa,
Right.
What is going on here?
Exactly.
And you just want to get out of there. It's the same online. If a website looks good, you kind of trust the products more or the brand more, right?
Exactly. And the thing with Google Web Fonts is that they are, well, first of all, they're free.
Yeah.
And they're fast, right? The article touches on that. And that's kind of a huge deal for a lot of small businesses, especially those who may have limited budgets,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a library of really good fonts, and it's completely free, so why not, right? And they're cloud-based, I think, so they load really quickly. So, it's a win-win.
Absolutely. So, okay, we know why they're good, but how do you add them? So the article here mentions two ways to add these fonts. You can use a plugin, which sounds really easy, or you can, you can do it manually with code.
If you're not that tech savvy, definitely I would say plugins. They're the way to go,
Yeah.
It's just so much easier. And the article specifically mentions easy Google fonts, I think.
Oh, yeah, easy Google font.
Have you ever used that one?
Yeah, I have. It's super easy. You just install it, turn it on, and then you can, play around with the fonts,
Yeah. That's the good thing about plugins, It does all the hard work for you, the technical stuff.
Right.
But, if you want like a really specific look, a lot of times the plugins don't, they don't let you do that. So in that case, you might have to do it manually.
Right. Which brings us to the code. And I know that might sound a little scary, but the article breaks it down pretty well.
Yeah.
It explains how to edit something called the functions.php file.
Yeah.
You can think of that as like the, the control panel kind of for your website.
Think of it like this. The plugin is like a preset.
Right.
And the code is like, the code lets you tell the website exactly what to do. Like, let's say you want different fonts for your headings, your body text, captions, all that. You could do that with code, I think.
Okay. But to do all that, you would need like some coding knowledge, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You definitely would need some. So, if you're not comfortable with that, it's always better to just stick with the plugin or, maybe find someone who knows code.
Okay, so let's say we've got our fonts, we've installed them, we're feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
What's next? So this article talks about applying the fonts to different parts of your site. And it's, you don't just use the same font everywhere, right?
No. Each part of the website, it has a different job.
Right.
So, for example, headings, you want them to, grab attention,
Right.
But the body text, you want that to be really easy to read. Imagine, reading a whole paragraph, but the font is, super fancy and curly. No one wants to read that.
I know, right.
You get a headache just looking at it.
Yeah, totally. So the article here has this section called Best Practices, which seems really, really useful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How do we make sure that the fonts we choose are actually working,
So first, they say limit the number of fonts you use.
Okay.
Because too many fonts, it can make your website look a bit messy, unprofessional, right? When you wear too many patterns, it's like that.
I know. Like too much is happening.
Exactly. And they say 2 or 3 font styles should be enough.
Okay, 2 or 3. Got it.
Less is more.
Less is more. What else?
Readability.
Yeah.
Think about who's going to be reading your website, right?
Mm-hmm.
How old are they? Are they on their phones or computers? Even things like the spacing between the letters,
Right.
That makes a difference in how easy it is to read.
So you're saying it's almost like you have to design with like empathy, right? You have to think about the person on the other side of the screen.
Yeah, totally. And you'd be surprised how many websites they don't do that. They just design it for themselves, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have limit the number of fonts and readability. What's the third one here?
Third one is consistency. Use the same fonts across all your website's pages, you know? Like if you have a logo with a really cool font, use that same font for like the headings.
Right.
Just in a different size maybe.
So it's all about familiarity, right? You create a brand, you know? Like when you see that Coca-Cola logo, you don't even have to read it. You just, the font is so recognizable.
Totally. And it's all about like, how fonts make people feel certain things.
Psychology of fonts. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's recap.
Okay.
Limit the number of fonts you use. Make sure it's easy to read, especially for your target audience. And then be consistent. Use the same fonts on every page.
Those are the golden rules. The golden rules of web fonts.
The golden rules. Okay.
And as part of this article, it's not just about picking fonts, right? They also talk about their company, Now Technology Systems. They offer like expert help, right?
Oh, yeah. They kind of they use this whole font thing as like a gateway, right?
Yeah.
to all these other services like what was it, search engine optimization?
Yeah. SEO, it's like helping your website show up higher on Google.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then eCommerce if you're selling things online.
Makes sense, right? You
Yeah.
start thinking about fonts,
Yeah.
and then you think, oh, maybe I need help with, all this other stuff too.
Exactly. It's like you're opening a door, right?
Yeah.
You start with the fonts, but you realize, oh, there's this whole other world of, web design and how to like improve my website and my business.
Totally. And that's what good web design does, right? It's not just about making things look nice. It's about using everything, including fonts, to make your website better, for your business.
Wow, this is pretty inspiring. I'm already thinking about like redoing my own website. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, why don't we take a little pause here? We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into Google Web Fonts and all the cool things you can do.
It's crazy how much of a difference fonts can make on a website.
I know, right? It's like we were sleeping on fonts this whole time. So before the break, we talked about the why and the how of, Google Web Fonts, but I really want to like dig deeper,
Yeah.
How do we use these fonts to like not just make things look pretty, but to like really showcase our brand? What's the strategy here?
Okay, so the thing with fonts is they kind of make you feel certain things, like colors or images.
Right.
Like let's say you have a playful handwritten font, right? That might make you think of creativity or friendliness, right? But if you have a font that's like bold and geometric, that could be more like confidence, like I don't know, a strong brand, something like that.
So it's like dressing up for an interview, right? You want to wear the right clothes to make the right impression.
Exactly. And just like with clothes, there are like these rules, like we talked about limiting the number of fonts, remember?
Yeah.
And readability and consistency.
Right.
So let's think about that a little more.
Yeah, give me some examples. I'm curious.
Okay, so imagine you're making a website for a kid's clothing store, right?
Okay.
You might want to use a font that's like fun and playful, maybe with rounded edges, like it's like inviting you to play.
I can see that, yeah.
But what if you're making a website for, I don't know, like a law firm or something, right?
Yeah.
Something more serious.
Right.
You probably wouldn't use that same font, right? You would want something that's more, I don't know, traditional, trustworthy. Like a serif font, they call it. It has those little lines at the ends of the letters.
Okay. So even before you read anything on the website, the font kind of tells you what to expect, right?
Exactly. You have to think about your brand. Right. What are your values? Who are you talking to? Who are your customers?
Right.
You don't want to use fonts that like contradict your brand,
Okay, so we talked about fonts, emotions, brands. What about readability? Like, how do we make sure people can actually read the website?
Yeah, that's a big one. You can have the most beautiful website in the world, but if you can't read it, then what's the point, right?
Totally.
People will just leave. So first thing, font size.
Okay.
Make sure it's big enough, especially on phones, right? Because a lot of people are on their phones these days. I hate it when I have to like zoom in just to read something. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
When you have line spacing, it's called leading, I think. That's the space between the lines of text.
Okay,
You
yeah.
you don't want the lines to be too close together or too far apart, right?
Yeah.
It just makes it hard to read.
So it's like Goldilocks, right? You want it to be just right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then color contrast,
Sure.
That's really important for people who maybe can't see that well. You need enough contrast between the text and the background. Imagine trying to read like gray text on a white background. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's like all these little things, right? They all have to like work together to make the website, both beautiful and easy to use.
Yeah, and that's when it really works. When you use fonts not just to make things look pretty, but to make them work better.
I like that. Yeah. I'm seeing fonts in a whole new light now. Before I just thought, oh, this looks nice, or this doesn't look nice, but there's like a whole science to it.
There is. And you know what? It's always changing. That's the cool thing about web design. There's always new things to learn, new trends,
So we have to stay curious.
Exactly. Never stop learning,
Yeah.
And never ever underestimate the power of a good font.
Okay, so we talked about installing Google Web Fonts, choosing the right fonts, readability, all that good stuff. Let's take a quick pause here to let all this sink in, and then we'll come back and finish up our deep dive.
And we're back. Google Web Fonts, man. It's like it's a whole world,
I know, right? It's pretty amazing all the things you can do with fonts.
Yeah, I'm definitely not taking them for granted anymore, that's for sure. So, okay, we talked about choosing the right fonts for your brand, make sure they're easy to read, but what else? What are some like pro tips, How do we make our website like really, really stand out? Okay, so think about visual hierarchy, like how your eyes move across the page. You can use different font sizes and font weights, to make certain things stand out, make it easier to read, especially when there's a lot of text.
So it's like you're using the fonts to like guide the reader, right?
Exactly. Like big, bold font for the headings so people know what the main points are, right?
Right.
And then maybe a smaller, lighter font for the body text.
Okay, yeah, so it's like a visual rhythm, right?
Yeah.
It keeps things interesting.
Yeah, totally. And you can even use fonts to like add some energy,
Yeah.
like a font that's slanted or maybe a script font, something a little more playful.
So it's not just what the font says, but how it makes you feel.
Yeah, exactly. Like the font can set the mood.
I like that. Okay, what about contrast? Like making certain things really pop out on the page.
Oh, yeah. So like for your call to action buttons, right, the buttons that you want people to click on, use a bold font, maybe a sans serif font, make it really stand out from the rest of the text.
So you're kind of like telling the visitor, hey, click this.
Right, exactly. You're guiding them,
Yeah.
And you can even use different fonts for like quotes or testimonials.
Right. So it's like fonts are adding another layer to the website, It's not just text anymore. It's like it's part of the design.
Yeah. And with Google Web Fonts, there are so many to choose from.
I know. It's amazing. Okay, so we've talked about all the cool things you can do, but are there any things to avoid, like any font mistakes that could like ruin your website?
Oh, yeah, there are definitely some things to watch out for. One thing is using fonts that are too similar, Like if your heading font and your body text font are too close, it's like, well, it all just blends together.
Right, it's like there's no contrast, right?
Yeah. And then don't use fonts that are too hard to read, the fancy ones.
Yeah, those can be tough. It's like, what are you even saying?
Exactly. And, and don't use too many different fonts. We talked about that before, but it's really important. It just makes the website look, I don't know, it just looks messy.
So it's like a balance, right? You want to be creative, but you also don't want to, go overboard.
Exactly. And remember, it's your website, So experiment, have fun, and find what works for you.
I love that. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into Google Web Fonts. I feel like I've learned so much.
I'm glad. And remember, the possibilities are endless. So go out there and make some awesome websites.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. And remember to check out our website for more deep dives on all sorts of topics.